Disney remake of The Little Mermaid has attracted a lot of attention. The diverse casting of Halle Bailey, a black American actress in the role of Ariel, raised a lot of eyebrows. This week, the Internet Movie Database has been forced to change its rating system for the movie after review bombers targeted the new live-action release. Well, joining me now to discuss this is journalist and author Alex Larman. Alex, it's really good to have you on the show. Obviously, you've seen the movie. Tell us what you thought.
Well, the trouble is, Arlene, is that it's a film that's based on an animated film from the late 1980s, and that film was about an hour and a half long. This film goes on 2.25 hours. And the problem is that you get to a stage, probably about an hour and a half in, the length of the original film, you become very, very bored indeed. Because the thing is about The Little Mermaid is, yes, it's woke. Yes, all the changes that have been made are generally for the worse. But it's also, as a piece of filmmaking, not very accomplished. And so, yes, you can see that a lot of people criticising it are because of Halle Bailey's colour, because obviously she's a mermaid. A mermaid has to be a certain colour. This is a well-known fact. But it's also that as a piece of cinema, it doesn't work very well, because what you can see is that Disney, as with all of their other films, they've not taken any risks. They've tried to make it filmmaking by committee. The reason why it ultimately fails is because there are structural things that it does, which makes a nonsense of the entire film. I mean, I would go into a spoiler now, but I think it's quite important to express this. In the original film, there's a scene at the beginning when the Ariel character, who's the mermaid, rescues Prince Eric. And then at the end, in the big denouement, he rescues her. So that's quite a nice bit of parallel. It's quite a nice structural thing. In the film, in the live-action film, she rescues him twice. Once at the beginning, once at the end. So the white male character has all agency removed whatsoever, and it ends up essentially being this rather absurd exercise in wish fulfillment. Now, you can't judge it as a serious piece of filmmaking, because it's a Disney live-action film about a Little Mermaid, as the title implies. And it's interesting because it's done very well at the box office in America, but internationally, it's not doing very well at all. That might be because the word of mouth has been absolutely appalling. It might be because people are sick and tired of the Disney live-action remakes. It might also be that perhaps, and what I'm interested in, is the idea that Disney are getting it wrong, because ever since they've been on this mad policy of trying to revive as many of their intellectual property things as possible, whether it's the Disney cartoons, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Marvel, there's a real sense at the moment that they're just throwing a lot of money at this streaming service they've got, Disney Plus. There's no real imagination. I mean, what's so depressing about The Little Mermaid as a film is that it doesn't feel like a piece of cinema. It just feels like a focus grouped piece of ideological nonsense, which at 2.25 hours is quite tiresome, actually.
Yeah, I was reading that one film buff had said that it sacrifices all the charm and fun for personal politics. And we shouldn't forget, of course, that this is meant to appeal to young people, and they go to the cinema to enjoy a movie. They don't go to be lectured, do they?
Well, I saw it with my 7-year-old daughter, and she said to me about an hour in, "Daddy, I'm really bored." And then two hours in, she said, "Daddy, I'm really bored." And of course, my daughter is exactly the sort of person who's the target audience for a film like this, because she's somebody who's very interested in male and female roles. Even at that age, she's interested in the idea of being empowered. But the problem is that it doesn't work even on its own terms, and that's what I resent so much. It's that it's one thing for a film to be woke and to succeed artistically, but when it tries to be woke and it fails artistically, you're just left with this rather boring, rather flat exercise, which, if you excuse the pun, is rather waterlogged from the beginning.
And Alex, tell me, there was some reports that there was a dig at the Princess of Wales in the Little Mermaid movie. I wasn't quite sure what sort of a dig that was going to be or what it was. Did you notice it? Was there something there?
Yes, there's a bizarre bit when they're talking about what names a princess should have, and Diana is raised as the first name, but then it's Catherine, and someone says, "Oh, no, not Catherine." And I was thinking, if this is a coincidence, it's a very strange coincidence. If it's a dig at the Princess of Wales, I was thinking, why? I mean, it isn't as if one looks at the Princess of Wales and thinks she's a controversial or unpleasant character. And I mean, I'd really love to know the process that went into the screenwriting and the direction of that scene, because you think, I mean, this is also supposed to be a film about women, a film about empowering women. So to have a dig at a very high-profile woman would seem rather out of kilter. And so, I mean, honestly, I do not know if that was intentional, just some mean-spirited and rather unpleasant dig, or just accidental because it's just another piece of amateurishness.
It's not incredibly inclusive, I have to say, by saying, oh, no, anybody who's called Catherine can't be a princess. But in any event, do you think they'll be doing any more remakes, Alex? I mean, are Lilo and Stitch going to be remade now? I mean, I love Lilo and Stitch, I have to declare that.
The trouble is, Arlene, is that what I was worried about was if it was as big a success as it was proven to be in America, at least, that we were going to have nothing but an endless stream of live-action remakes. We are now going to have nothing but a stream of live-action remakes. Yeah. And the trouble is, yes, that's going to be Lilo and Stitch as well. The question you have to ask is, but who's it for? I mean, is it for people who saw the films first time round, like me, and are now taking their children to see them? But the problem is that you take something like The Lion King, which was an absolutely tremendous animated film. As a live-action film, it doesn't work at all. And of course, the problem is that you can get away with things in animation, which you cannot in live-action. I mean, there's a rather creepy crab in the Little Mermaid, and it just looks weird, because I think it would be absolutely fine if you see it in a cartoon. As soon as you have this live-action CGI crab, it starts to look peculiar, and I think that goes for a lot of the film, actually. But it just feels, and I think it goes for so much contemporary filmmaking, people are trying to fit films into a box now, and they're not actually allowing them to be pieces of cinema. They're trying to get them into these very narrow categories, which are essentially appealing to this imagined audience. But I don't believe that audience really cares that much. I mean, most people do not want to go and see a film for a lecture on gender politics or racial politics or anything else, or indeed environmental politics, which is quite a large part of the film's mise en scène. People want to go and be entertained. I think that ultimately political ideology doesn't have a place in a children's film.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Alex, finally, this looks to be part of a wider agenda, not only with Disney, but with many cultural warriors that are out there at the moment. So this is going to continue, isn't it?
Oh, yes, this isn't going anywhere. And I think the problem is that it's getting worse and worse year in, year out. So, of course, what's going to be interesting is to see ultimately how audiences respond to it. Because if people stop paying to go and see these films because they're sick of it, and by that, I don't just mean conservative audiences. I don't mean the sort of audiences who would look at a website like the Worth It or Woke It website. I mean just the average people who are paying their £10, £12, £15 to go and see a film like Little Mermaid. Because ultimately, if you're not being entertained, if you feel like being beaten over the head with a placard, then you think to yourself, well, I can stay at home. I don't need to spend my money. Because going to the cinema for a family of four is quite an expensive day out. And I think that ultimately people do not want to spend a lot of money in difficult circumstances to go see films without that sort of message.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex, for joining us this morning. I really enjoyed our conversation.